During the days of Ebola attack, the Obama administration took the outstanding leadership in fighting against Ebola. United States created, huge public fund and created SEPA, and then fought Ebola, even though Ebola was taking place in Africa. But this COVID-19, we do not see that kinds of international leadership. The United States was not taking leadership. On the contrary, the United States just threatened to withdraw from the WHO. European countries was also obsessed, with themselves. No country was taking leadership. China was tainted because of the origin of, COVID-19. Therefore, China didn't have international leadership and legitimacy to push for the international cooperation. Consequently, there was a lack of international leadership. Ironically, vaccine nationalism has become rampant. That was the international scene. But one thing is very clear. Now we are really concerned about future of the world. What would be world order? When you talk about global transformation, transformation means what? Transformation of existing international order. Existing international order is characterized by loose bipolarity between China and the US, weakened multilateralism, fragmented regionalism. That is the current shape of world order. Would that be continued or not? There are a lot of speculations. For example, Henry Kissinger argues that if pandemic becomes protracted, there's a good chance to return to world cities and the new medieval age. Countries will be shutting down their national borders. They will be seeking very autarchical economic system or very closed regionalism. And globalization will come to an end. It's a very nightmarish situation, but we cannot rule out that possibility. But some people argue that, like John Allen, the president of Brookings Institution, argued that whoever wins this COVID-19 will be writing the history. That the winner of the COVID-19 will be determining the future course of history. Then a large number of scholars argue that the US will be winner. US has a sound, United States has a sound economy. US has a really large pool of talented people. United States has a technological edge. United States has an advantage in energy self-sufficiency. And United States has much the dynamic demographic system. Given all these kinds of things, the US will be ultimate winner. Then US will be creating new order and peace in the world. And they call it Pax Americana too. In fact, Joe Biden, made it very clear that the United States will be leading the world again, as the United States did after the Second World War by creating GATT, the General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs and Trade, Bretton Woods monetary system, United Nations, and also formation of NATO and other America-centered alliance system. The United States created new world in order and also extended the Marshall Plan. Maybe US can take the leadership again. That is a scenario of Pax Americana too. The peace through the United States, through peace through the American hegemonic leadership. But some people like Kishore Mahbani of National University of Singapore takes different view. He argues that, look, China will be winning the game. Why? Look at the United States. Economy is, American society is in disarray, politically polarized, fragmented, racial tension and conflict have been on the rise, and economy, we can assure of the future of American economy. And more importantly, Kishore Mahbani argues that the United States does not have spiritual vitality. In fact, he was borrowing from George Kennan. When George Kennan wrote an article in Foreign Affairs called under the pseudonym of Mr. X, advocating the virtue of containing the Soviet Union. And that in that article and other books, George Kennan was arguing that the U.S. will be winning the Cold War. Why? U.S. has a spiritual vitality. The Soviet Union does not have spiritual vitality. And Kishore Mahbani was quoting from him saying that China has a spiritual vitality. The United States does not have a spiritual vitality. Therefore, future will belong to China. The Pax Sinica, peace through China, will be much more plausible than the Pax Americana too. Of course, China cannot restore old form of a tributary system, but there could be China Central, what we call the Sino-centralism, China-centric order in Asia Pacific. That is third possibility. Fourth possibility is Pax Universalis. There's a peace through universality. George Bush, 41, made a very historic speech at the United Nations on September 23rd, 1991. After victory in the first Gulf War, he came to the United Nations and he declared the U.S. will not seek Pax Americana anymore. United States will be seeking Pax Universalis, peace through the United Nations, peace through multilateralism. But given the fact that the United Nations and other multilateral institutions have weakened over time, there might be very little chance for the restoration of Pax Universalis. However, if China and the US cooperate each other, and also middle powers like South Korea, Japan, Australia, selected number of European countries, Canada, if they work together, maybe we might be able to restore multilateral order, and we can give us some kinds of attention to the centrality of United Nations and etc. But normatively, it is a correct approach. But practically speaking, that may not be feasible. Finally, there is continuation of status quo. Okay, I explained about status quo. Loose bipolarity between the U.S. and China, and weakened multilateralism, regional fragmentation, and I think that my bet is this: there will be a continuation of status quo. But status quo has three dimensions too. One is improve the status quo, meaning what? U.S.-China relations get better. And worsen the status quo. The U.S.-China relation get worsened. And just continuation of status quo. But given my analysis, I think there will be worsened status quo. Worsened status quo will take form of a new Cold War. On July 23rd, 2020, this year, Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, made a very historic remarks at the Nixon Museum. He said that this COVID-19, Wuhan virus, was a result of lack of transparency on the part of Chinese Communist Party. Chinese Communist Party is repressive of Chinese people. Chinese Communist Party has a global hegemony ambition. If we do not change China, China will change us. And he all of a sudden came up with this lexicon of anti-communism. That is really reminiscent of Cold War. Cold War was all about ideological confrontation. All of a sudden he brought anti-communism to the forefront. And then he argues that we should pursue geopolitical containment of China, economic decoupling of China, and we should pursue techno-alliance to deter Chinese superiority in science and technology. And also he advocated value alliance among like-minded countries or a coalition of democracies to confront Chinese Communist Party. It's really, but In fact, during the days of Cold War, it was all about the ideological confrontation and military confrontation. But now, the US injected economic decoupling and techno alliance. But this kind of approach has put South Korea in very difficult position. Okay. A lot of people argue that Joe Biden may pursue different policy, but I don't think so. Of course, he will pursue military containment. On economic decoupling, he might be Joe Biden might be much more selective. Technology selective. Value issue, he'll be as tough as Trump. Therefore, military dimension and the value dimension, there will be a tougher American encirclement of China. Of course, the Biden administration will be using the much softer terms, not like the Trump administration. However, its policy will be tough. And that will put us in an extremely difficult position, okay? If there is a revival of the Cold War in the form of a new Cold War, that will restore all the bloc diplomacy, okay? And that will put us in a very difficult position of, the dilemma of existential choice. And also, if China and the US, okay, rivalry fails to be controlled, then there is a danger of Thucydides' trap, as Graham Allison pointed out. Then, as he said, that there could be second Cold War. Okay? And also, economic decoupling would politicize the process of globalization, diminish our welfare, and that will really foster the end to East Asian regionalism. And also, all this pandemic crisis of multilateralism, waning economic wealth and human security issues will put us in very difficult position. Okay? And also, another our dilemma is this, as a result of pandemic, if the US and China relations get worsened, then it will be much difficult for us to solve the North Korean nuclear problem peacefully. And also, we got to be aware of that the rise of the yellow peril and the possibility of a crash of civilization, okay? Because US-China rivalry will eventually take the form of this racial dimension too. Then what kind of choices do we have? We have at least, I would say that 5 choices. One is pro-American balancing. Okay, America is hegemon, and we take side with hegemon, and deter the rise of revisionist power, China. Another possibility is bandwagoning China. Okay, China. Therefore, that really goes back to 17th centuries. Okay, during the King Injo, Yi dynasty. Okay, there was a rising Qing dynasty, declining Ming dynasty. At the time, we took side with declining hegemon called the Ming dynasty. Qing dynasty prevailed, and there was a, we all know the Byungja Horan. Okay, and as a result, we had the worst humiliating moment in Korean history. Therefore, people argue that, look, let us make a much more cold analysis of reality, okay? China is rising, US is declining, therefore we should take sides with China. The other approach is that let us pursue standalone policy, okay? We have been getting sick and tired of all this bloc diplomacy, okay? Neither of them is workable. Neither taking side with US or taking side with China will be workable. We should pursue our own independent line. By doing what? One is a very passive way pursuing standalone strategy. That is what declaring permanent neutrality of the Korean Peninsula. Another one is what? Let us become much more credible middle power with a nuclear armament. Fourth approach is a muddling through approach. Okay? That is what? Economy with China, security with the United States. We should muddle through. Muddling through is a nice word, but it's like walking on the tightrope, extremely dangerous. But like during the period of President Kim Dae-jung, we could do that because U.S.-China relations was good. Okay? Clinton administration and Jiang Zemin were in good terms. That is why we could play this game. But given the current tough and tense confrontation between Beijing and Washington, it will be extremely difficult for us to work on the tightrope like that. Finally, the transcending this sandwich trap. That means what? All those four approaches have a much higher cost than the real benefit. Then we got to take a much more imaginative diplomatic move. That means what? Let us create a new order, okay, so that we can get out of this bloc diplomacy. Then in what way? Fostering Northeast Asian economic community, promoting multilateral security cooperation regime, okay? And therefore, we work with Japan, Australia, and other like-minded countries so that we can prevent the rise of new Cold War between China and the United States. Therefore, we pursue more proactive approaching. In order to pursue these kinds of transcending strategy, inter-Korean relationship should be improved. Then my personally favor, of course, most of Korean people, particularly conservative people, would favor this pro-American balancing. We should take sides with the United States. Okay, some nationalists would argue that we should take sides so we should pursue standalone strategies. Ordinary people might want a muddling through strategy, okay. And some few historians would argue for bandwagoning China. Okay, but I personally prefer this transcending approach. We should play a key role in creating new order so that we can get out of all this bloc diplomacy. Then how can we do that? And there is a so-called, how do we prepare this global transformation and changing, security, and economic challenges to, South Korea? First, I want to emphasize the importance of a smart diplomacy. Smart diplomacy means what? Setting the priority of national interest right, okay? And should be able to articulate policy goals with our policy instruments and resources. And also, most important thing in pursuing smart diplomacy is contextualized intelligence. We should have a better intelligence of understanding and judging about our external environment. And also we should have an imagination and very flexible strategic positioning. That is what I mean by smart diplomacy. Another element is a principled diplomacy. We cannot pursue anemone diplomacy. We should adhere to our principles. We should be flexible, but we should not be opportunistic. And also political leadership should have courage and resoluteness. That is what I mean by the principled diplomacy. Third is a national consensus diplomacy. Korean society is extremely polarized. Unless we create a national consensus, we cannot pursue effective, diplomacy. we should seek public support. We should pursue more inclusive deliberation on the agenda of foreign policy and national security. Third, finally, I would advocate the maximization of public diplomacy at home and abroad. Then what kinds of public diplomacy? I would suggest that we should find new niches such as the K-quarantine to deal with the pandemic. And also now Korea has become a success story of graduating from the developing to developed countries. Therefore, Korea development assistance model can be another very important asset of public diplomacy. And also, now we are in the process of the peacemaking on the Korean Peninsula. And we have been quite successful in sending peacekeeping forces abroad under the auspices of the United Nations. And particularly our Jaitun troops in Arbil have been very, very successful. Therefore, that could be another important asset of our public diplomacy. But finding niches is one thing, but the setting agenda is another. Now we have 10th biggest economy in the world. Okay, I would say that we have quite great deal of public power, soft power. Therefore, it is time for us to we should be able to set the agenda in international fora. And also, another important element of public diplomacy is the expansion of our international constituents. Okay, and also we need to cultivate the horizontal networks. We have been doing quite well, but we should move further. Okay, I would say that the current cultivation of networks and formation of international constituents would be on the threshold level. We haven't really crossed the threshold. Therefore, we should be more active on that one too. Finally, it is very important to show legitimacy and leadership in pursuing public diplomacy. Without legitimacy, you cannot be successful in pursuing public diplomacy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Moon. I believe you're having I think on the YouTube people that are viewing, we've had some difficulty. We apologize. But later on, all of our discussions today will be uploaded onto YouTube. So you may, listen in on all the important points made later on. We're going to take a quick break during which the people here will be conducting an essential part of any Korean event, the family photo session. We'll have a quick break for our audience that are joining us online. Consider this, I guess, a coffee break or a bathroom break, whichever you'd like. So we'll be back shortly after we do our photo sessions. So we'll start our family photos.